want to welcome everybody back. We're going to get started with our program. And I did want to recognize two individuals. So Mr. Andy Icken with the Mayor's Office is here. He joined us. Andy, if you can stand. Please stand. No. And then also Mr. Craig Rayborn, who is head of our Houston MPO. He didn't want me to say anything, but I'm going to say it anyway. So thank you, Craig. As many of you remember, TAG began as a small community of transportation advocates, experts, and leaders. And to this day, I see and feel that same sense of camaraderie and community every time we gather. We take a little longer to be seated and a little bit longer to leave after an event because we all genuinely enjoy conversing, catching up, and working towards a common cause. It is an honor to introduce our reason for gathering today, Mr. Sanjay Rahm. Sanjay has been with TAG since the beginning, and he embodies the essence of the transportation community. He is warm, kind, smart, dedicated, passionate, and has always cared deeply about the community and industry he serves. TAG is deeply proud that this amazing advocate and leader is now the chair of Texas's largest metro transit authority, and for the fourth largest city in America. Chair Rahm joins us today with endless accolades and a bio that just keeps growing. He is everywhere all the time, literally everywhere. I think you all can agree with that. But he always makes time for a call, a colleague in need, a critical conversation, and a community looking to see what's next for our transit future. Please join me in welcoming Metro Board Chair Sanjay Rahm to the stage to share his vision.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Andrea, for that gracious introduction. I'm trying to figure out who you were talking about. So were the folks at that table. Thank you all for being here this afternoon. I'll start with what's hot in the transit world this morning. You'll see communication coming from Metro later today. There is no longer a mask mandate because of the court ruling. Those that want to wear a mask, we still ask you to wear a mask. Those that don't want to wear a mask on our system, you no longer have to. So I'm sure that was a question that's been a burning topic on several folks' mind. The last time I was at a TAG luncheon was Hectra's executive director, Roberto Trevino. And he started off that conversation speaking about statistics pertaining to the Houston economy. Right? A $500 billion GDP, which would rank 26th globally if we were a nation. So let's think about that economy. We've all enjoyed some tremendous economic growth over the last several decades, but that didn't happen by chance. It happened by design, because those that came before us chose to make visionary investments in the Houston Ship Channel, the Port of Houston, 2 international airports and now a spaceport, our highways, our toll road system, and securing water rights for a growing population. So what do we do every morning in Houston? We get up, drink our coffee or tea, and then we move the entire city of Atlanta into the urban core. And about 6 hours later, we try to perfect that, and we move them out back to their homes in the evening. Get up the next morning, rinse and repeat. Do that all 5 days of the work week. Now, it is projected that over the next 10 to 20 years, we will add the populations of San Antonio, Arlington, Corpus Christi, and a few more cities on top of ourselves. What do you think that does for mobility? Well, our citizens in Houston and Harris County had a choice in 2019, and they chose to make another visionary investment in Metro Next. Let's see if I can get to work this. Oops. Oh. Up to $3.5 billion in bonding authority, which when combined with federal and other matching dollars could be up to $7.5 billion in investments in our public transit system. Over 500 miles of improvements, And this bond referendum, this is Houston, an auto-centric city, passed with almost 70% of the vote. I don't know about y'all. This day and age, anything that gets over 2/3 majority is one heck of a mandate. What that tells us is folks in our region are hungry for solutions. They're hungry for that paradigm shift in transportation that Mayor Turner has a vision for, and we at Metro are committed to bringing that vision to fruition. So how are we going to do that? Most of y'all have seen this before. We're going to do that with light rail extensions to Hobby Airport, to the North Shepherd Park and Ride. Over 75 miles of Metro Rapid, our bus rapid transit. We'll make improvements to 17 of our high-frequency bus routes, accessibility improvements, reimagining park and ride, and so much more. We'll talk about a couple of those corridors in some detail. Okay. The University Corridor Bus Rapid Transit Project. This is a corridor where improvements have been delayed for some decades, for those of you all that get that drift. We now have that much needed east-west connectivity that goes longer than the original plan, all the way out to West Chase, a single seat ride from West Chase in the engineering corridor, if you will, through the Galleria, Greenway Plaza, connects our 4 universities, the University of Houston, Texas Southern, HCC, and the University of St. Thomas, gets to the Eastwood Transit Center, runs up Lockwood to Kashmere Gardens and Tidwell. When built, this bus rapid transit corridor will be the longest BRT corridor anywhere in the country. We're already working feverishly to get submissions to the FTA so we can get a favorable rating and eventually funding. But we're not stopping there. We're looking at enhancements. How can we put a spur that'll connect us to Gulfton, which is the densest part of our region, the most diverse part of our region with high propensity transit riders? Working with other partners in the region to see what else we can bolt on to this BRT corridor. The next is the Inner Katy BRT corridor, again, a much needed east-west connectivity. We have a locally preferred alternative, and we couldn't do this without our friends at TxDOT. Eliza and Varuna are here. We are looking to see how we can take some of the demand of the general purpose lanes, put them in a dedicated guideway, not just for our bus rapid transit vehicles, but also for our regional express. Our park and ride buses coming in from the west on I-10 and along 290 from the northwest part of the region. This then allows for the managed lanes to be built within that TxDOT right-of-way, which we are in as well. 7.6 miles, and think about this. We've got the convention center, the Marriott, Marquis, and Hilton, but when we have this connectivity, you'll have a one-seat ride to all of the hotels in the Galleria. Mr. Robinson talks about how that opens us up for Houston to go, for Houston First and others to go market for larger conventions, in addition to the day-to-day riders as well. So the boost corridors, these are our 17 high-frequency bus routes, looking to see if we can make enhancements, signal prioritization, a far side stop so the buses can cross the signal and stop so the cars can make the right turn. A better stop, a better walk, a better stop, a better ride. Little things that can make one heck of a difference. Raising the bus pad at the bus stop, allowing folks to get in and out of the bus that much faster. May seem small, but when you add it up every single day along the entire corridor, significant travel time reductions. We're already working on 3 of those, 54, 56, and the 82 on Westheimer. I know we all talk about Houston being a really diverse city. If you want to experience the entire world without ever leaving the bus, get on the 82 downtown and ride it to the west side of Houston. You'll hear every single language that is spoken probably across the state of Texas. Universal accessibility, working with Dr. Frieden, my colleague on the board, looking to see if we can make our bus stops not just compliant with the ADA, by the way, he authored parts of the ADA, but getting it even better than what the basic requirements of the ADA are. And later this month, we would have finished 2,500 bus stops, which is more than a quarter of all of the bus stops in the metro system currently. So what does this do? When all of this is done, imagine the future. We'll have a region where our job centers and business districts, our hospitals and clinics, schools and universities, shopping centers and grocery stores, parks and recreational facilities are all connected by safe, reliable, frequent, accessible, and equitable multimodal options. That's what Houstonians are hungry for, because they want to be able to choose whether to walk or bike like Commissioner Garcia did today. I'm glad you're wearing a bright green vest so drivers can see you on the road. They want to choose if they can walk, ride, roll, drive, or our preferred choice is be driven by metro to their destinations. This is what's going to allow us not just to attract, but retain businesses and talent. We are in the mobility business, but we are also in the socio-economic mobility business. We often talk about education as an escalator to a better future. But if you don't have access to transportation to get to that educational institution, how are you going to get there? So our job is to connect housing to educational and job opportunities via transit. About six years back, when I was fresh on the board, we did the reimagined bus network. Pretty successful. We've had folks from New Zealand and New York knocking on our doors, asking how we did it. Must have been doing something right. Now it's time to reimagine our park and ride facilities. This is how we do park and rides, or we have done park and rides in Houston. There are big old concrete parking lots. Time to transform them from concrete parking lots to mixed-use development, a destination, a garage for our customers, shopping center on the first floor, housing above, depending on where we are, workforce housing. I'm talking about affordable housing for our first responders, police officers, firefighters, teachers. When you have our public servants live in the communities they serve, it helps them, it helps the community as well. How are we going to do this? With public and private partnerships. This is what a park and ride could look like. A destination instead of looking like this. Maybe. This sounds cliche. We can't do this by ourselves. We can do a lot more if we all collaborate together. And we have a track record of good partnerships. TransStar, a shining example. Our HOV hot lane network on every major highway in the region. We're in TxDOT's right away. We partnered with TxDOT on the Uptown Silver Line with the dedicated elevated corridor that gets you through the most congested, maybe not the most, top 3 congested sections of highway anywhere in the state, probably anywhere in the country. We want to build on these partnerships, work with the City of Houston, Harris County, TxDOT, HECTRA, Harris County Flood Control District, TERSs and management districts, because that's what it's going to take. Yes, we have a $7.5 billion program, but it's going to take a lot more than that for us to solve for mobility for the future. We have recently adopted a climate action plan. We also want to be on, if I can get this to work, we also have piloted the first autonomous vehicle for the first mile, last mile connectivity on the campus of TSU. We'll soon be getting to the University of Houston as well. We're looking at electric buses, hydrogen fuel cells, more to come on that front. But all of this is in addition to what we do on a day-to-day basis. You know, most people think of us as an agency that runs buses and trains, but we do a heck of a lot more than that. We are a public service agency. Yes, we get folks from point A to point B and to ball games. By the way, go Astros. Good game last night. Good way to start the home opener. But we are there when folks need us the most. We are there when there's a fire and the firefighters need a cooling bus. When those displaced by the fire need to get to a shelter. When there is a flood, when there's a hurricane, we get folks to where they need to be so they are safe. And over the last 2 years, we've provided links to critical livelihoods during a pandemic. So we are here to find a way to move the ball faster and move the ball further. You all know that moving the ball faster and further is a team sport. We're able to do this because of the 4,100 plus strong Metro family, an excellent leadership team who are all here, led by our CEO, Tom Lambert, and tying it all together, my colleagues on the board, Mayor Bob Fry, Jim Robinson, and Troy Taylor are here this afternoon. So all I'm going to tell you is get on board. It's time to get on board so we can get things delivered and deliver on the promises of Metro Next. So thank you all for being here this afternoon.
Thank you all for being here, and we want to just drill down on some of the things that Sanjay's talked about today. You started to talk, you showed some pictures about a transit-oriented development, right? Reimagining park and rides. You showed some pictures about that, and you talked about partnerships. Can you take a minute and drill down a little bit more about what is the vision, how soon is it accomplishable, and what needs to happen in this room to make that a reality?
Sure. So we've got a whole host of park and rides and transit centers. And as you saw on that image, a lot of them are big concrete lots. So depending on what part of town we are in and what the potential use could be, the partnership's going to look different. You know, P3 is a buzzword now, right? Public-private partnership. So in some cases, it's going to be public-private partnership. In some cases, it's probably going to be a public-public partnership. And in some cases, it's going to be a public-public-private partnership. The reason I say that is we've got some locations that are high potential for development. We say we are ready and we go to market. I'll talk a little bit about when we want to go to market on that as well. You'll have 20 folks lining up. And there are other locations where you may not have 20 folks lining up. We want an equitable solution where we see development of our park and rides across our service area. By the way, our service area is about 1,300 square miles. That's about the size of the state of Rhode Island. The needs are very different based on where you are, right? So in some cases, what do we want out of this? One, we want to be able to have folks live adjacent to transit. We want that'll generate ridership for us. We want it to be meaningful, responsible, sustainable development of these real estate assets that Metro has. And we want it to be, at the very least, revenue neutral. We'd really like for it to be revenue positive, especially in those high potential locations, because that's what's going to allow us to take that positive revenue to bridge the economic viability gap, if you will, in some other areas. Depending on where we are, we might be looking to partner with the housing department of the city of Houston, the housing authority at Harris County, looking to see how do we bring workforce housing. So what we want to do is put together all of the real estate assets that we have where we think there is potential, and then go to market sometime. We're going to work with a sense of urgency on this, because that's what the private sector needs, is they need certainty on schedule. They need definition of risk. You put something out there where you say, well, we're not sure when we want to do it. We're going to club it with this federal process. That's a quick way to drive folks away. Right? So we're going to decouple those, put things together that could be attractive to the private sector, and go to market sometime later in 2022.
You heard it here first.
Sometime later in 2022.
So, Director Trevino talked about this. You've talked about this in terms of scale of Harris County. Commissioner Garcia's precinct is almost the size of 2 congressional districts, right? You talked about the size of the economy. Hectra, we were talking about this at our table, does 2 million transactions a day. That's more than Amazon. So Harris County comes with scale in a lot of things that we do. How are we positioning ourselves for the infrastructure bill? Because with our scale, how are we positioned to take advantage with the federal bill that just passed?
Lots to unpack there, right? So we've got a whole host of projects that are on the Metro Next bond referendum. So the one that we're furthest along is the University Corridor and the Inner Katy project. The University Corridor, we entered into project development in September of 2021. Typically, that process takes 8 to 14 months. We got it done in 5 to 6 months. Say sense of urgency, that's what we're talking about, right? We got 2 years to get that process done, and we are already looking at ways to see how can we scrunch that schedule. And the reason we say that is because it's a great time to be in the transit world. We're hearing conversations about unprecedented investment into transit at the federal level, and we've got to be ready for it because we waited a long time for this. And we want to make sure we've got multiple bites at the apple. So we're looking to see how can we put enough in front of the FDA so we can benefit from the infrastructure bill. I'll go a little bit into history, Mustafa, here. There are other parts of the country where they've entered into project development even before they got the voters to opine. We cannot do that. We understand where we live. If we had tried to do that, we'd have put the bond referendum in jeopardy, and that's not something we could afford to do. So we're doing that. We're looking at the Small Starts program. For those of you all that are familiar with the Federal Transit Administration, this is in your vernacular. We're looking at projects, different sizes of projects. The University Corridor is in the billions. Looking at some $100, $200, $300 million projects that we can bolt on. So we've got multiple chances to take advantage of the infrastructure bill. Talk to your congressional members. We're talking to the Houston congressional delegation. I don't know what they're calling it these days. We used to call them earmarks. You can call it what you want, but quacks like a duck, kind of a deal. So talk to them about getting some advanced funding to advance some of our other projects, looking at those boost corridors. And anytime you go, I'll take Eliza's predecessor, Quincy Allen, told us that a definition of a good partner is not just somebody that comes with good ideas, but somebody that also comes with some money. Right? So we, with the bond referendum, have that ability now. And we want to work with our regional partners in saying, what are other projects that we can go tell the feds that, hey, our local match is not just from Metro. It's from the city of Houston, it's from Harris County. The boost corridors that we're talking about, 2 of those projects have county funding to bolster what we can do by just ourselves. So it's a regional approach. It's going to take multiple agencies working together so that at the end of the day, we are all in this together. The entire region benefits from whatever monies that we can bring back to Houston from the infrastructure bill.
On my phone, I keep track of time. Some of you are texting me. Stop. It's going to buzz out. Come on.
That's the reason I left my phone on the table.
So one of the texts I got on this is when we look at our region, we have 5 employment hubs. That's the starting point, and then we have more, right? COVID has also changed a lot of patterns in how people commute to work. What's your take on this, and how can we take advantage of this post-pandemic world, and then looking at our employment sectors?
So sorry, we are not a single business district region, right? Multiple business districts. I've talked with some of you all in this room. Both my kids went to Lanier Middle School, and one went to Bel Air High School, and I live in the Energy Corridor. So I got to experience 610 not once, not twice, not thrice, but 4 times a day. And when I went back from downtown to my office on the west side, I-10's congested both ways. Because there are folks, the millennials want to live in Midtown, the Heights, downtown, and they want to work in the Energy Corridor, Woodlands, Sugarland, the other lands, if you will. But there is a demand.
There's a lot of lands here.
There are lots of lands.
Some of them are sweet.
What was it? This land is my land? No, just... we need to figure out a way where reverse commute becomes a realistic option. And in the Metro Next program, again, we can't do this by ourselves. Eliza, Varuna, Raquel, and all of those that text out, that's how we make this work, is having bidirectional HOV. Because I don't know about you guys. When I first moved to Houston, the HOV lanes were, I think, open for only about 6 hours. And I asked somebody, I was naive enough, then I still am, I asked somebody, I said, is a concrete union complaining that it gets tired if cars run on them 24/7? Because if you've got the infrastructure asset, let's use it. So if you've got the buses assets, and if you have a bidirectional HOV, we are able to connect those business districts both ways. I-10, US 59, we've seen where the congestion is not just one way. It used to be that way 20 years back, no longer. Right? And we are at a time where somebody's going to promise all of those Californians that want to move to Texas that says, come to Texas for $200,000, we'll build you a mansion. What they don't tell you is you won't recognize that mansion during the day because you will leave when it's dark and you'll come back home when it's dark. And we've got to solve for it.
I'm looking at Andy. Andy's looking in this direction. Is remembering that Mayor Turner is the Mayor of Climate Action Committee. It's a national role that he has. You mentioned California, right? So it's recently the Climate Action Plan was adopted. What does it mean, and what actions are being taken around that?
So we've been in the climate action business way before it was fashionable. Think about it. Upwards of 30% of the downtown workforce comes into downtown through a metro asset. Park and ride, fixed route, rail, or the HOV lanes. The agency pre-pandemic was about 130 million rides a year. Think about the amount of greenhouse gas emissions that are reduced because of those rides. Yes, we've now adopted a climate action plan. We've gone beyond that. We've acted on the climate action plan. We ordered our first round of electric buses, 20 of them, regular buses, and also 10 paratransit buses. We have the ability to get 20 more. We've tried this before, 2016, 2017 timeframe. Tom can correct me if I'm wrong. We tried the electric bus here. It worked beautifully. Really nice, great ride. You could get from one end of the route to the other end of the route. It's nice and cool, except it works really great for about 10 and a half months out of the year. July and August, forget about it. You can either have a cool bus or you can get to your destination, not both. Battery technology in just the last couple of years has gotten significantly better, so now we are in the game. We're also looking at hydrogen cells, fuel as a fuel source. We've got to look at our overall fleet mix because we are a region that is prone to hurricanes. Right? So, God forbid, we are an entirely electric fleet and power goes out. Who remembers February of 2021? What do? Right? So we've got, because at the end of the day, remember I said we're a public service agency. When folks need us most, we need to be able to get folks to where they need to get to. So that's on the electric buses. We're also looking at solar panels. Metro has about 1.6 million square feet of rooftop space. About 1.2 million of that is behind a fence. I grew up in a small mining town with a power plant, so I know a little bit about watts and megawatts. We could easily generate 100 megawatts of power if we were to look at whether some of these older buildings can accept or not. We are looking at it actively at this point in time. And the third thing that we're going to do is to not just use resiliency and sustainability as buzzwords, but be very deliberate and intentional on everything that we do in the agency, day-to-day operations, as well as when we build new projects. How are we building in resiliency into the mix? We're partnering with the City of Houston. Carol Haddock's here, Veronica is here. We're looking at traffic light synchronization. What does that do? Yeah, it improves travel time for our buses, but it improves travel time for every single vehicle on the street. What does that do? It allows you all to spend more time at home. Less time lost due to congestion getting stuck in traffic, better productivity, and frankly, a significant reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. A combined impact of hundreds of millions of dollars to the local economy on an annual basis. So there are multiple things we're going to be doing on climate action. Those are some of them that we're looking at this point in time.
You know, Texas has the second youngest population in the country after Utah. And it continues to be growing, meaning that as you look at the people that are coming into Texas, they tend to be younger. What are we doing to attract that as a new ridership?
So, show of hands, how many of y'all in this room couldn't wait to get your driver's license when you were eligible to get it? I'm going to suggest that you all go to the University of Houston and ask the same question to a crowd this size. and see how many hands go up. This new generation has different ways of getting around. And I have a 19-year-old that doesn't want a car, didn't get a driver's license till he was 18, because they want to be on this instead of driving. They want somebody else to do the driving for them. Right? So that is who we are building this for. We're not going to change our behavior. I'm certainly not going to change my behavior. We're not going to park our cars and trucks overnight and start taking the bus and train. So the next question is, so why are we building all this? Well, if 5% of our region adopts public transit as a mode of getting to where they need to, it'll make it that much easier for the other 95% to be, I didn't see anybody from the constable's office. The rest of them can speed down the highways, right? So so we have got to work on giving options for folks that want to call Houston home. You know, for a long time now, Metro has done 50% off for K through 12 students. And now that has also been expanded now for undergraduate students as well. 2016, 2017, we looked at doing the Summer of Fun, which essentially makes it free for K through 12 and college kids during the summer. The reason is very simple. If you can get them into the habit of using public transit when they're 10, 15, 20 years old, they probably continue to use it when they're my age. That's who we are building this for. Our federal process is, we've all gotten used to Amazon Prime during the pandemic, right? Order something, get delivered to you 3 days later. I checked. There are no trains or BRTs available on Amazon. Right? These things take time to build. We are building it for the 20, 30-year-olds who we want them to call Houston home. We're in a competition for global talent. We got to make it attractive for them to want to call Houston home, because that's how we grow our economy.
And as we get more density, as we get more people, without it,
You finished.
people can't get to all of the employment centers that we have, regardless of what the pandemic is doing in terms of how people work.
Yes. So yes, the pandemic does change the dynamic, but I think we're seeing folks come back. I believe that Hector's traffic counts are not back to pre-pandemic levels. They're at 10% or so higher than pre-pandemic levels. I don't know about this work from home thing. I think most folks are shopping during the day. So that doesn't matter whether they're going to work or if it's a leisure ride or a pleasure ride. If it's congested, they're not going to like it. They're going to call someplace else home.
I mean, think about what was just said, that the traffic count is actually higher than it was before the pandemic.
Yeah.
Think about that. That mobility is the core to quality of life.
Exactly.
And if you're not going to solve the problems of tomorrow, you may have a very different tomorrow.
That's right.
And so,
If I may, one quick thing. That's the reason when we talk about what that future is, we've always talked about, yes, we still say we want to get folks to education and job opportunities. But you want transit to also be an option when you want to go to the park. That's the reason when we do Inner Katy, there will be a stop at Memorial Park. I mean, that's a jewel that we have within the urban core. It's going to become a choice destination. It already is a choice destination, but we want to be able to get there via transit. So not just if folks are working from home and shopping between 2 and 3, they still are worried about congestion and mobility.
yep. I'm going to ask you 2 more questions, then we have a special presentation at the end, so I want everybody to sit in their seats. We've talked a lot about partnerships. We've talked a lot about where Metro is headed. What is, in your mind, Metro's role in the region?
We're not just the agency that operates buses and trains. We are in this together with everybody in this room. We are a mobility agency. And I'm talking multimodal mobility options, but I'm also talking beyond that. I talked about socioeconomic mobility. We've got to work with every agency in town, work with the state, work with the feds, work with the private sector to make sure we solve for mobility in this region, because it goes back to the 20-year-old. I was at Dr. Couture's house last evening. when somebody graduates from the University of Houston, Tier 1 institution now, they have a choice. We in this room, Metro, working with the city, the county, TxDOT, management districts, private sector, we've got to figure out how we solve for that mobility issue, because if we don't, you're absolutely right, it's going to be a very different looking tomorrow.
Yeah, and I think a lot of this is personal to you, and it's very personal to me. I mean, we have our MPO head right here. We have David Robinson, who chairs the TPC. Carol's here, Runa, and our TxDOT regional director here. A lot of decisions get made by the people in this room.
Absolutely.
And TAG's purpose is to increase funding in the region, but that increase of funding doesn't matter if we're not able to execute it together. What, you look at this like, in a personal way. Tell me a little bit about that, because you and I have talked about this.
Two pieces personally. I think I've worked with many of you, probably better than 50%, probably not 70%. We'll get there with Metro next. We've collaborated on multiple things, on the public side of things, on the private side of things, on the nonprofit side of things. We cannot do this, the agency cannot do this on our own. The agency has to collaborate with public sector partners, private sector partners, stakeholders. That is the only way we get to move the needle. We can sit here and talk about moving the ball further and faster, but if we're just running it by ourselves and there's nobody blocking and tackling in front of us, we're finished. The Texans know a little bit about this, so a little bit. Sorry, you can get me into trouble for saying that, but
You're an Aggie.
it's going to be, I'm from a wrecking crew for those Aggies in the room here, right? So it's going to take collaboration for us to get this done, and you all be sure I'm going to be calling folks to see how we can move the ball faster, further collaborating with each other. Personally, what does this mean to me? Speaking of Texas A&M University, when I graduated, if somebody had told me that 25-something years later, the mayor of the fourth largest city would tap me and say, can you help lead the board of the largest transit agency in Texas? Who would have believed that? So I've spoken to some of you all. This is personal to me. I do a lot of stuff, nonprofit world. Mustafa himself has told me quite a bit that he says, do you ever do any meaningful revenue generating work? I'd be really happy if he just told me that. But he takes pleasure in asking my wife that question. So, but my civic engagement goes back to my parents. I saw both my parents build the infrastructure in the small town, 250,000 people that we lived in, but also the civic organizations and the institutions there. I'm going to say something that's going to freak Tom Lambert out one more time. They've told me that when I was a little baby, I'd be on a stroller and I would go in the evening to the local bus station. And all I wanted to do when I grew up was to be able to drive one of those big buses. He still lets me drive the bus during the Metro rodeo. He's behind a fence. It's all secure. You all don't have to worry. This is, I'm thankful to the mayor for trusting me and having confidence in me to do this. It is a big responsibility and not something that I take lightly, because what we do together as an agency and with our partnering agency and the private sector, it may sound cliche, but it truly has a direct impact on what tomorrow looks like. So that is something that keeps me up at night. That's something that I'm committed to doing the best job I possibly can, and can't do it by myself or just by one agency. I mean, we put a man on the moon. You think we can solve mobility problems in Houston? I think we can. The way we get there is by collaborating together and making it happen.
I was watching Director Trevino when you said you drive the bus. Both of us went like, if we walked in the bus, we see you driving, we're getting off.
Hey, you saw the title of the slideshow?
Yeah.
Get on board, we'll tell you who the bus driver is later. So,
ladies and gentlemen, please give.
Thank you all very much, appreciate it. Thank you.
I like to ask Jack to come join me on stage. We have a presentation, and I want to thank Sanjay not just for being here, not just for his leadership at Metro now, but for years and years of working with all of us, whether he was the president of Leadership Houston, he was president of Texas Lyceum, and many other civic hats he's on. He is somebody who is always accessible, approachable, and he's the kind of partner with a lot of people in this room that can actually move the ball further and faster. So again, please give him a round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Appreciate it.
I'm going to ask Jack to come up. Today is Andrea's last day with TAG. It shivers me to say that, and it sucks. I've told her many times. But she's off, heading to a different adventure. And TAG is a community. TAG is a group of friends that work on transportation, and Andrea has been our stalwart leader in making that happen. So, Jack, I'm going to walk over there. Esmeralda and I are going to do something here, but do you want to say a few words?
Yes. Where is Miss French? Is she hiding?
Where are you, Andrea?
Andrea,
Andrea. All right.
por favor. Please, won't you come up on the stage?
Yeah.
Do you need help? No. She's still a young woman, despite 9 years with TAG as our leader. Well, it's a little early. Come take a look.
Come. Why don't you,
I was worried it was like an oil painting or something.
Jack was going to say a few words.
Just a few, as always. You don't believe me? Let me tell you about two people on the stage, in addition to our chair, Mustafa Tamiz. E.T., Esmeralda Tamayo. Esmeralda, would you hold up your hand? She is famous for many reasons. She's partner and friend, of course, of Miss French. She's part of the glue that holds TAG together. All of that, of course. However, there is an additional piece of fame in her life that she shares with her husband, and that is that they have twin 18-year-olds, Sabrina and Sebastian, who performed last week at HSPVA, the High School for the Performing and Visual Arts, for their senior recital. This Homo sapien had the opportunity to be there. What a thrill. Yes, a mariachi recital. It was fantastic. And for those who have not been to HSPVA to see a recital, please do plan that for your future. A young crowd, you have many years to live. Now, Ms. French, your old friend Jack, who offered you a job 9 years ago, well, really 11 years ago, and then again 9 years ago, has written a rhyme for you.
Brace yourselves.
From Baltimore and Oklahoma City, she did arrive, and immediately we did contrive. To secure her talents in marketing and transportation, knowing her background, we knew it wouldn't take a reincarnation. While the partnership got her first, that bubble later burst. And soon we were able to brag that Andrea had joined TAG, and never was she a drag. Putting her foot to the TAG pedal, she soon proved her mettle. TAG grew with Andrea at the helm, placing us at the top of the advocacy realm. She is one heck of a woman in motion, and we are grateful for her leadership and devotion. Even though she will not be out of sight, to keep her love for TAG burning bright, we present this gift of light, which we hope for her will be a delight.
I have the board of TAG join us up here, please. Greg, I know I saw you, saw many of you here. Can I get board members to come up? Okay, come on up. Andrea, thank you so much for all your leadership, all of the work that you've done. We'd love for you to say a few words. By the way, today is her last day.
Is that true?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
You were going to change your mind.
No, oh my gosh. So thank you. I want to apologize. Y'all had to be subject to some of this up here. I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. No, it's a delight. 9 years. Wow. It's been an incredible ride with so many of you from the very beginning, and so many new faces that have joined since. And it is a community, and I'm just forever grateful for the opportunity. So thank you so much, and thank you to Mustafa and Esmeralda and Jack for, well, maybe for a good poem. It's okay. It's okay. Need a little work. I didn't edit it clearly, so you know. Thank you, everybody, and thank you so much. Thank you.
Come on up. We're gonna grab a picture. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for being partners with TAG. Thank you for building a community of mobility that is so important for the quality of life of a region that is the 27th, if it was ranked as an economy in the nation, in the world. Think about that. So thank you for everything that you do. We're gonna grab some pictures. Please say hello to Andrea before you go out. Look forward to all of you being here. Come on back. We're gonna grab a picture with Andrea.